Welcome to another edition of Eye on the Issues. And today we're getting ready for the next legislative session. Today we're talking to Senator Jim Anderson, represents District 28 there in the great state of Wyoming. Sir, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. And I know one of the pieces of legislation you've been talking about and working on has to do with squatters. Let's begin, though, by talking about your background. How long have you been a lawmaker?
12 years. I just got reelected, so I'll be served 16 years.
And I got to ask you, why do you do it, and what do you like about it?
Oh, I didn't like the representation I had when I retired, and so I talked to people, and they said maybe you should do something about it. I was chairman of the party in Campbell County when I lived there. I've been active in the state party and local parties for 50 years. And so I had some support from the local party here in Trona County to go ahead and run. So I've beat two challengers back, well, three. One was a Democrat, beat three of them in three different elections.
And what do you like most about the legislative sessions?
uh, the fraternity that it is and the organizations, the Senate. I do like the Senate and the people that are in it.
Nice. So we're talking about legislation to deal with squatters. Obviously, that's been a big issue around the country, many parts of the country, due to the illegal immigrants that have been coming across mostly the southern border of the United States. So can you give me an idea of what prompted you to move forward with this type of legislation? Are there any examples of things that have happened there?
You know, it's interesting. One of my constituents told me about her incident, I would have said we don't have a problem with squatters. And she informed me what had happened to her with her house. She walked into one of her they're really not rental houses, they're for sale. She built a whole track of them and she was just checking on them to make sure all the work was done and that kind of stuff. And four guys popped up and said that they had bought the house and they were the legal owners. And of course, she knew that wasn't true. She scared them off by telling them that she was going to get the sheriff, but she found out that there was no way she could get the sheriff to kick them out, that she had to go through a civil case and win a civil case first, then the sheriff could do something about it. So what we found was the LSO attorney, I had him check. Florida had a similar situation and did legislation. What they did was turn it into uh, a change it from a civil to a trespass. So making it a trespass, then the law can help you. So if they're trespassers, then the law can come in and kick them out. So what we had to change in our laws is to change them from tenants and that kind of description to trespassers.
And
So that's what
what's the
the
status
Florida
of,
law
of,
did.
of the bill? Is it going to be coming up this session? Did you pass it last, or where things stand?
We worked on it all interim session. Uh, the attorneys and I and a couple other legislators, and then I went to the Judicial Committee to ask them to make it a committee bill. Committee bills have a habit of making it through the legislature a lot better than individual bills. So they worked on it three different meetings and finally agreed that they would take it as a bill for the committee and passed it just 3 weeks ago. So now it'll go to the session as a committee bill.
Nice. And so it's something similar to what Florida has, making it a criminal offense, which allows the sheriffs to come in and remove people. So let me ask you this. So what ended up happening with your constituent, with that lady you were speaking to? Did they ever come back? Were they gone? Did she have to do anything?
No, they were gone. They were gone. And that's what happens to everybody. After after I got working on this, I talked to the realtors statewide, and they put out a question and found out it happens all over. That it wasn't just a Casper thing; it was Cheyenne, Jackson, everywhere is having the same problem on a lot smaller scale, like you say, than the southern states with the illegal immigrants. But then we found out also, once we got the bill written, we had commercial guys come up and say they have the same problem and want to be added. But this is only for residential. So we'll have to do another bill next year and for the commercial and industrial. People are moving into sea containers and living in sea containers that never intended to have anybody live there. It's really a mess. It's really a mess. And we think it'll get worse as Denver has more and more illegal immigrants. Those guys are going to spread out from there, and we're going to see more and more of this in Cheyenne.
So, do you think this problem is really just taken off since Joe Biden took office and since he kind of opened the border, or has it been going on longer than that? Any idea?
Uh, my realtor friends say it's new to Wyoming since Joe Biden opened up the borders and made lawlessness a a non-issue. You can break the law and do whatever you want and not get prosecuted from prosecutors. So I think it's sure a recent thing in Wyoming. Might not be in other states. Obviously, Florida has a problem and has had for a while. They got a nice bill and got it under control. We had to modify theirs a little bit to comply with our constitution and everything, but it is almost the same.
Now, I would venture to guess that with the new administration coming in, things are going to change dramatically, although it might take a little bit of time. How do you feel about the Trump administration that will soon be taking over on January 20th?
I think that's going to be a breath of fresh air. We're going to finally get some actual law and some actual prosecutions and get that border closed. And a lot of good things are going to happen in the next 4 years.
And you've probably heard Tom Homan, who will be the so-called border czar, if you will, talk pretty tough to make you. What's your response to that?
Boy, I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think he's a great guy for the job since with his experience with the border and that he's a tough guy that'll actually make something happen. So I think Mexico is paying attention to that and saying, we're not going to do anything. You're going to have to do it all. I think the new president is going to ask Mexico to help us with that, and they did in the past. And I think they probably will this time also. But Holman is a wonderful appointment, as are a lot of other appointments that President Trump has been making.
Yeah, he's steamrolling right along. Many of the appointments obviously are a shock to people, but in many instances, it's a good shock. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out with the Senate confirmation hearings. And speaking of things that are going to be changing soon or happening soon, you've got a new legislative session that's going to happen after the first of next year, shortly into January. How are you feeling about that?
Oh, we had a wonderful caucus and elected some real good leaders for the Senate. The House is going to be a little sketchy, I'm afraid, but the Senate is in good hands with the president and vice president and the floor leader. We're in good shape and will perform some good legislation. The House, I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be a little more difficult there, but we'll see what happens.
Are there any big issues that you're looking forward to besides the squatters bill this coming session?
I was on the Joint Appropriations Committee, so that budget, supplemental budget, is a big deal for me. That's what I've been working on, and we've got a lot of things in that supplemental budget we need to get through. But the Freedom Caucus says they're not voting for any spending, so that's going to be a little difficult.
Mhm. And there's been some issue with the coal mining and how the Biden administration has been handling that in the state of Wyoming and even Montana for that matter. Do you have any analysis on that you wanted to share? You might want to share.
The coal guys have enough lease acreage right now to continue to operate. What they need is lease acreage for the future. So this really isn't shutting them down, but it could if it continued. And they were afraid of a Democrat administration that would continue that. So if this new administration will decease on that, then we'll be okay on coal leases in Wyoming because they can operate right now for a few years with the lease acreage that they have, but they need to be getting more acreage so they can secure their future.
And obviously, inflation has been a big issue for many Americans. Everything from buying a house to buying a car to buying groceries. What are your thoughts? Do you see that changing as this new administration takes over?
Uh, that really is a national issue, that's for sure. I think it will change if they quit spending so much money. What caused that inflation was federal government spending too much money. And I think that the czars that Trump has appointed will cut some of that spending. I'm really looking forward to them making some big moves in cutting spending. $1 trillion budget, that's just too much. And 36 trillion in debt, that's too much. We've got to do something about that. And I think the Trump administration will look at doing something. Obviously, they can't get much done in 4 years, but they could sure put us on the path to the right way.
Yeah, would you call it almost a breath of fresh air to hear people talking like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy about government waste, government spending, chopping it? Because we really haven't heard much about that, even though this country has been in a financial free fall for years.
That's not new. If I look back in the last 40 years, there's been a lot of people saying, boy, they're going to get in there and they're going to cut and they're going to do this, but not the horsepower that Elon Musk has and Juan Swanee, not that kind of horsepower. And with the president backing and with the House and the Senate also backing them. So I think something actually might be able to happen this time.
Yeah, I
So
tend to
yeah,
agree with
that is a breath of fresh air. But I'm still uh crossing my fingers, hoping it does.
you. All right, real quickly, back to your legislation for a second. You feel real good about getting this through this session?
Yes, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think it's got a good chance. Uh, I don't see any reason that somebody would be opposed to it.
Mhm. All right, and I've got to ask you this question. I always end my interviews for the most part for people that are that have lived in Wyoming most of their lives. What do you like most about living in the state of Wyoming?
I like the vacancy that we have. There's not very many people. There's a lot of open spaces. I like it that way. I really like the spring and summers and falls. Winters are a little tough, especially if you're traveling to Cheyenne every week and that kind of stuff. But I like the vacancy.
Mhm. Well, Senator, hopefully we can catch up with you again during the session. Folks, if you want to find out more about what's happening around the state of Wyoming, just go to wyliberty.org. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.